Jesus understands the importance of perception and identity. He asked the question about himself, who do people say that I am? And who do you say that I am? It is Peter who answers correctly, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Then Jesus shifts the conversation from his identity to the identity of the church, which is very important for us to consider today. How do people perceive us? How do people perceive the church? Who are we? What is our purpose? What makes the church special? Of course, we love part of Jesus' answer, especially when we read it in the King James Version. The gates of hell itself will not prevail against it. In a world where all hell seems to be breaking loose, this is indeed some very good news. The forces of death, despair, darkness, no matter how great those forces seem to be in our world, will not prevail, for we're built on a rock. Sickness, disease, divorce, terrorism, war, hate, the power of Hades, which literally means the power of death, will not have its way with us. That might be one of the reasons that we like to call this place where we meet on Sunday morning a sanctuary. A term, by the way, which I prefer over worship center or auditorium, which are popular today. Death is moving and hell is coming. Evil is barreling toward us like a Category 4 hurricane. It threatens us. It frightens us. It slams into us. But together, gathered in the sanctuary of God's church, we are reminded that we are safe and secure from all alarm. There's no way that I could begin to count the number of members of my congregations that I have pastored, who have told me that they have no idea how people make it in this world without the church. Because when we are gathered here in community, assembled in our sanctuary, with people who are praying with us and for us, when we're worshiping together, when we're singing hymns like leaning on the everlasting arms together, when we hear evil knocking on the door, when we hear evil knocking, demanding to come in, threatening to do us harm, with nothing to fear and nothing to dread, we respond with utmost confidence. What's that you say? You say that's evil out there trying to get in here? You say that's hopelessness out there trying to come into my sanctuary? You say you threw me off, Sonam. Come on, help him, Jesus. Help him, Jesus. You say that's despair out there trying to get in here. You say that's hell out there. Oh, not no, but heaven no. Heaven no, in the name of Jesus, you're not coming in here. Heaven no, you're not taking away my blessed peace. Heaven no, you're not getting any of my joy divine. The good news is, and those of us who are in the church know it, despite the constant onslaughts of Hades, despite the powers that seek to destroy us, the church hangs on because we know that ultimately we will emerge victorious. We hang on. We hang on. We hang on. How many times have you used that expression to describe the church? How are things there at the First Christian Church in Fort Smith? How are things going at your church? Oh, we're hanging on. It's tough being church in today's world, but We're making it. We're surviving. You ever said that? Unfortunately, that describes both the perception and the identity of many churches today. They're in survival mode. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. For who doesn't want to be a survivor? Especially when all hell is breaking loose. It's a struggle, but we're holding on. It's tough, but we're making it. We're paying the bills. It's a fight, but we're keeping the lights on. Not sure what we think of him yet, but we got a new pastor, so we're holding on. We're surviving. But wouldn't you like to be more than a church that is just hanging on and getting by? Wouldn't you like to be a church that is more about making a difference out there and less about maintaining the status quo in here? Wouldn't you like to be a church that is more about bringing some heaven to this community, to this city, to this region, to this nation, and less about hanging on until we all die and go to heaven? Although we love the term, shouldn't the church be more than a sanctuary? Let's look again at this passage. About the church, Jesus says, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Did you hear it? Do you see it? Jesus says it's the gates of Hades, it's the gates of death, it's the gates of despair, it's the gates of darkness that will not prevail against the church. Notice he's not talking about the gates of the church, the doors of the sanctuary prevailing against an onslaught from Hades. Hades is not knocking on our door. He's talking about the gates of Hades that will not prevail against an onslaught from the church. It's the church that's doing the knocking. When Jesus describes the identity of the church, when Jesus talks about who we are and who we're called to be in this world, he doesn't talk about a host of evil rounding us, as we sang a few moments ago. He doesn't say death is coming and hell is moving. He says that it's the church that's coming and it's heaven that is moving. It's the host of good that is rounding the host of evil in this world. By talking about the gates of Hades, Jesus, I believe, is expecting the church to be on the offensive. Jesus is expecting the forces of truth, light, grace, justice, love, and life to be on the move. Not only knocking on the gates of Hades, but tearing down the gates of death, darkness, and despair. Jesus isn't talking about all hell breaking loose. Jesus is saying that when we embrace our identity, when we answer the call, when we claim our authority, when we fulfill our mission to be the church in the world, all heaven will break loose. Sadly, the perception of the church is often the other way around. We are the ones cowering behind the gates, behind the walls, behind the stained glass. We are the ones on the defensive. We are gatekeepers and wall builders. For our own protection and preservation, we decide who can come in and who must stay out. But Jesus warns us, what is bound on earth is bound in heaven. And what's loosed on earth is loosed in heaven. In other words, too often the church, by taking a defensive posture with our gates and our gatekeepers, with our walls and our barriers, with our obstacles and our hurdles, the church has been guilty of preventing all heaven from breaking loose in this world. However, Jesus says we possess the keys. He gives us the authority to open doors, remove barriers, and get rid of obstacles. As the church, we are not gatekeepers deciding who's in and who's out. We are gate destroyers. We are not wall builders. We are wall demolishers. And when we do that, when the church swings wide its doors, when God's people leave the safety and the security of this place we call a sanctuary, when we boldly go out into the world to confront the gates of death, darkness, and despair, Jesus says the gates of hell will not prevail, and all heaven is going to break loose. It must be said with Reverend Dr. King that I do not believe Jesus wants us to use darkness to defeat darkness and hate to defeat hate. I believe Jesus wants God's people to use the authority entrusted to them to overthrow deep darkness with illuminating light, overwhelm racist hate with revolutionary love, overcome deliberate deception with biblical truth, overtake fearful prejudice with empathetic mercy, override uncalled for meanness with called for kindness, and overrun white nationalism with nonviolent determination for liberty and justice for all. I believe what our nation needs, what our world needs more than anything else, is for all heaven to break loose. And there are many ways that I'm looking forward to breaking loose some heaven with this congregation here in Fort Smith. Along with our financial support of the Week of Compassion Mission Fund, a mission trip to East Texas may be in our future to help remove hurdles to restoration. And if we do that, I believe if we leave the comfort of our own homes to help repair and rebuild the homes of strangers, you know what's going to happen? All heaven's going to break loose. With Ainsley's Angels, the organization that includes the special needs community and endurance events, we are going to tear down walls of disability that has prevented people with special needs from experiencing the joy of inclusion, acceptance, and accomplishment that one receives after completing a 5K, a 10K, or even a marathon. And when we do that, when we reach out and we accept and we include, all heaven is going to break loose. By being a church that is committed to the prophet's proclamation to take care of the orphans, we are going to do all that we can do to get rid of any obstacle to success that stands between a young adult who grew up in foster care and a promising future. We have plans to remodel more apartments for them. Somebody said when it gets a little bit cooler. And we have plans to mentor them. We need to sign up mentors right now. And when we do that, when we love them selflessly and sacrificially, all heaven is going to break loose. By being an anti-racism, pro-reconciling church, we're going to continue to break down the barriers of bigotry that are dividing our nation, to do all that we can do to work together with all churches, all faiths, all races, to stand up for the equality, the dignity, and the worth of all people. And when we do that, when we come together to fight for social justice, all heaven is going to break loose. By having a harvest festival, not only for our kids who are members of our church, but we're going to have a harvest festival for children outside of our church, children in shelter care and foster care, children who have never been to our church. And in doing that, we're going to bust down any door that may prevent anyone from being a part of our fellowship. And when we do that, when our focus is not only blessing our church children, but the children of our entire city, all heaven is going to break loose. As a church committed to the inclusive love of God, the extravagant grace of Christ, we will continue to destroy any gate, remove any hurdle, break down any barrier that anyone tries to erect to keep people from coming to this table and being a part of our mission to be the church in this city. A movement for wholeness in a fragmented world. And when we do this, when we welcome all to the Lord's table as God has welcomed us, all heaven is going to break loose. So let's embrace our identity together. Let's claim our authority. And let's answer the call to fulfill the mission to be the church in this world until all people know who we are, but most importantly, whose we are. Disciples of the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Amen.